All right. Welcome back to another episode of Light Skin, episode 25. Quarter century. We're getting there. It's climbing. And this week we got, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, Arik Forsman, member of the Duluth City Council, and work for Minnesota Power, and spend most of my time chasing kids. It's my real job.
Hey, that's life, and we get into it.
Yeah.
All right, so like always, we're going to start with baby Arik. And you have, I'm going to ask you this, as well, you know what? Let me ask you this first.
Yeah.
So I've never seen how your name is spelled, Arik.
Right.
Where did that come from?
So my parents told me I was born during the 1988 Winter Olympics. They told me I was named after an Olympian.
Okay.
So I spent a couple of months after that researching and trying to find this guy, and I came up empty.
Really?
So I came back and I was like, like on what Olympic team? And they said, no, it was speed skater. I think it was Eric Heiden, but we didn't like the E and the C, so we just changed it to an A and an F.
Okay,
like, that doesn't count.
Well, you could have told us that first before we researched everything.
Right.
Mom and Dad, we can talk about this later.
But funny enough, so I work at Minnesota Power for my day job, and a couple of years ago, they hired another guy with my same first name.
Oh, really?
Spelled
Okay.
Arik.
Yep.
And poor guy's in his 20s, and I went up to him at a retirement party and met him for the first time. I was like, man, one of us has to get fired because I can't deal with this. Like, I've never met anybody else with the spelling, and now I'm going to like accidentally send you emails.
Did you ask him where the spelling of his name came from?
I didn't.
Okay.
I haven't. So that
Does he still work there, or did you fire him?
No, he still works there.
Okay,
no, he's a great employee.
All right,
so.
well, my bad. Hey, you know, we talk.
No, there's still two of us. We've coexisted. But,
cool.
You know, it's like a combination of, there's some that traces back to Northern Europe. There's some that is based on Hebrew spelling.
Okay,
so there's not a consistent reason why. And then the most famous Arik is Eric Armstead with he was with the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know who he plays with anymore, but
yeah, so my real name, and then we get back to the interview. My real name is Dejuan, which a lot of people don't know that. And my real name my name was supposed to be Michael after my dad. So my mom was like still out of it, like after pregnancy and stuff. So my grandmom decided to name me Dejuan. And my mom woke up and she was calling me Mike. She's like, what do you mean his name is Dejuan? Where'd that come from? So we asked my grandma, like, where did you get that name? She said, I met a magician from France. And his name was Dejuan, but it was spelled like Dejuan. And she didn't know how to spell it, so she just sounded it out in her head, and she came up with Dejuan. I said, okay, well, that's...
So do you know magic then?
No, not really. I should have learned a couple tricks just to get the kids at work or something. But
I think you need to now that you're named after a French magician.
Well, look at that history lesson we just gave people.
Okay.
All right, now, baby Arik, tell us about where you were born, life growing up, stuff like that.
I don't normally tell this story because the public version is born and raised on the Iron Range in Minnesota.
Yep.
But I actually spent the first 6 months of my life in Boulder, Colorado.
Got it, okay.
My dad was a steel worker, so early 80s was a really down economic time in this part of the world. And so my dad got laid off from his job in the early 1980s, right after high school. So my parents bounced around in quite a few different places around the country. Went to work on the oil fields in Texas and Wyoming. They end up in Colorado. I'm born out there, and then they moved back home shortly after.
Got it.
Being on the Iron Range, like even 6 months in Boulder, Colorado, I feel like you could lose your Ranger card, so I don't share that too often. But most of my formative years were spent up there.
For sure. Okay. Yeah. Brothers and sisters?
No, only child.
Really?
Yeah.
You know what? I could have kind of guessed. They made everything is coming together. It's all coming together. All right. So tell me about growing up in the Iron Range. Where exactly in the range?
So I spent my elementary school years close to Hibbing, so Side Lake, Minnesota.
Yep.
Went to school in Hibbing, and then my parents are both from the eastern end of the Iron Range, Aurora and Hoyt Lakes.
Okay,
That's where they went to high school. That's where my grandparents still lived, and so when I was in 6th grade, they moved us back to that side. So one side of the range to the other, and then I graduated from high school on that side.
Is there a difference from West Range?
Oh yeah, man. You got Hibbing and Chisholm. That's its own thing. You got Virginia. and Evelyn Gilbert, which used to be super big rivals for all sorts of sports, and now it's consolidated in Rock Ridge. But they would, especially Virginia, would always beat us in sports. So they were like our arch rivals, playing basketball and baseball and all these other things at Mesabi East, which was my high school. And then I get to college at UMD, and I meet all these guys that I used to hate playing sports growing up, and now many of them are still my good friends that I stay in touch with. But so there's a lot of little sub-rivalries in small towns like that. Not unlike, I think, Duluth's neighborhoods can be like that sometimes.
No, for sure.
But for us, it was actually 5 miles to the next town.
For sure.
For some reason, those guys were way different than us. They were way better.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. So, growing up, did you ever think you wanted to get out of the range? And I asked that because I was running diversion up in the range, and a lot of times we get to talk to the youth there, and say, what do you want to do? This like, well, my dad work in the mines, or they work for this company that's all local. So we want to do the same thing, but a lot of times they don't think outside of that. So like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, growing up on the range, like Duluth is a big city. So I ventured all the way to Duluth after I graduated from high school. Right. And I would say that I never had a strong desire to leave the range. It wasn't like I was trying to escape my hometown. I liked where I grew up. It was a great experience. It was more a product of circumstances that I went all the way 60 miles south to Duluth. But I still have... One of the things that's really important to me is just loyalty, and so I still have a place in my heart for those communities. It's kind of led into the work that I've done in my day job, and then also serving on the council. So, and I think part of that's because when I was in junior high, the big employer up there closed. So,
and what was that?
LTV Steel. And so LTV Steel was the main driver for all of what happened in the local economy in the Aurora Hoyt Lakes communities. And it shut down when I was in 6th grade. And that was a huge deal. Like my best friend moved away. My class size went from, I think it was 100 to 60 when I ended up graduating. So 40% of our kids had left by the time we got to 12th grade. So it was a big deal, and that always was like a how do you change that? How do you make things better moment for me. My parents still live up there. They're in the process of moving down here to be closer to grandkids. Still have family, and it's still a place that means a lot to us. So about the steel company, were they bought out, or did it just close due to... No, it was market conditions. So that the place is now owned by New Range Copper Nickel, which is trying to develop a new type of mine there, but it still looks a lot like it used to back when it closed. It was 1,000 people out of work in a town. My hometown is about 1,800 people, and then the town adjacent, Hoyt Lakes, was over 2,000.
Yes, that's most of them.
It's a huge deal. I mean, Hoyt Lakes is named after an executive from that company named Hoyt. The company literally built that town. It's a company town just like Morgan Park. So to not have that facility there was a huge change. And it's led to, my hometown of Aurora is actually statistically the poorest community in Minnesota. By median income. So they're still recovering 20 plus years later.
Yeah, I've driven through there once and thinking there's nothing here. Like absolutely.
There's an A&W.
There's
big
some deal.
Really cool little shops in downtown, but other than that, there's really not a lot of industrial base. And that's what makes life affordable in a lot of ways for people, and what creates those family-sustaining jobs that I was lucky enough to grow up under.
So when you went to UMD, what was it? Kind of a big change leaving the range for you, or since a lot of people that you knew came from there, how was it kind of going from a small town to quote unquote the big city of Duluth? So I wish I could have a really great story about why I ended up in Duluth, but the fact was I was dating my now wife, and she was a year older than me in high school, and she went to UMD. Literally the only school I applied to. I could have at least applied to St. Scholastica or maybe UWS, but that was it. And she was one of 2 people I knew in Duluth at the time. So it was not a place that I had a lot of connections or anything like that. I was chasing a girl, but that worked out pretty well. And obviously when you get here, I mean, I don't know, Pez, what brought you here originally. I'd be curious, but
it's easy to fall in love with this place and to stay here. And sometimes you got to work a little bit extra to make that work for your life. But it sells itself in terms of why people want to be here. And that was true for me.
Yeah. Well, here, I'll give you a little run. So for me, I got done playing football and stuff, and I just wanted like something different, and had some family that played for the Vikings. So kind of came up here just off of them, and just wanted to see the area. But I thought originally, I would want to move to the Twin Cities. Hated the cities. I came from a big city area. I was like, I don't want to go down there. So kind of been all around, like from the cities all the way to Grand Marais, and on the way back we fished a bunch. And I love fly fishing. That's one of my favorite things. And on the way back, we stopped at Lake Ave Cafe. And we just drove around Duluth after that. And I was like, yo, this city kind of cool, you know? I didn't know nothing about it, you know? But ended up thinking, all right, I'm going to come here. I'll get a second major at UMD. So I did. I came here, got a second major. And, like, once I started getting plugged into Duluth, I loved it. And Duluth is very old school. So, like, if you ain't from here, and we talk about this a lot, it ain't real welcoming. You hear Minnesota nice, it's very passive aggressive, very. And I can say that now because I feel like I'm locked into the city. A couple years ago, I'd never say that now. But once I got the job working for Neighborhood Youth Services, NYS, at the Washington Center, and getting to learn the community and things like that, I just start falling in love with the city. Then you get outside of the UMD realm of just that bubble that they're in, downtown, campus, whatever. You start going over to Superior, you know, and then start finding the different pockets of lakes and meeting different people from east and west. I'm like, oh yeah, I love this town. And I'm locked in now because mostly what I do, but this has become home for me for sure. Like, I know I'm locked in. I ain't going nowhere. I mean, been putting in too much work in Duluth to, like, you know, up and leave. Plus, I feel like half the kids would beat my ass if I did. You know, well, so it's like,
that work matters a bunch in our community. That's funny you said that, little pockets, though. Because my perspective of Duluth growing up was pretty much the Menards in Hermantown to the Miller Hill Mall. Like, we didn't go down the hill. I think my parents just didn't like driving in a bigger city. And that's true for a lot of us on the range. Like, our perspective of Duluth is the top of the hill. So when you get here for college and you start to explore the city and actually explore the real community, it's a totally different experience.
And the people different. Way different. I mean, and it's fun, man. Like, there's always something going on, whether that's Bayfront or live music somewhere or some type of weird festival that doesn't make sense, but they came up with it and there's thousands of people. You know, there's something for everybody. If you want, apart from the cold, because it's, you know, ain't nothing to do in the winter but drink at the bars, you know, or play pool tabs, which me and Joe hit pretty big the other day, you know, so...
I got to play with you guys.
Come
I had one on my first pull tab and I have never won since.
Really? Yeah. Dude, quick side story. So I was out, it was me and a bunch of guys. One of them was the coach from UMD, the hockey coach, Sandlin, and he's coming on next week. But we went out and they were, just hurry up and get here. And I was running behind because I was doing some kid stuff. And we were going to Mr. D's, best pull tab place. Okay, I plugged y'all. Don't make me eat these words, okay? Mr. D's, hands down, is the best pull tab place around, other than T-Bones. But I got there late. The guys waited, you know, so here, throw the 20 in, it's like 8:00 at the table. First pull, 7:03. Two in the same hand. My second or third pull was 7:03. I was like, oh man, we on the roll. Last pull of the day, 7:03. So I pulled over $2,100 just in those. And then we get, you know, hey.
Why are we hanging out here? I want to come.
Next time we have to shoot at Mr. D. We'll shoot the show at Mr. D's. But all right, Joe got it. All right, back to this. What did you study at? What did you study at UMD?
Business. So I was a business major.
Focus on anything or?
Human resources.
Okay.
Yep. So I have always...
Everything about this makes sense.
Yeah. I've always been a people person, right? So the people side of business is what I was interested in. You know, I understand finance. I understand accounting. It's never been my jam. So that was my introduction to, my professional career, and ended up being my first 7 years of my job after that. But I love my time at UMD.
Yeah.
Got super into UMD hockey. Love that Sandilands coming on. So my place isn't as cool as Joe's, but my basement is all UMD stuff.
Cool, okay.
Signed jerseys from the years of winning the championships. But we went to school when they were still ascending, so they hadn't won a ship. They were still like fighting and scrapping to get past the first round of the conference playoffs, and so to be there when they finally got past that threshold and won 3 in the past 10 years, it's been pretty cool.
Heck yeah! Did you? What was some of your favorite things to do while you were in college? I mean, you ain't got
besides
to
hockey games.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, besides hockey games. I mean, it was typical college experience.
Yeah.
So we had a place on Woodland Avenue.
Yep.
That my college buddies and I still talk about the address. My daughter was born on the date of the address.
Oh, cool.
And that
That's
became
funny.
like a thing.
Yeah.
There's been some weird coincidences like that, but I had a bunch of high school buddies and then some college guys we met. And we stay in contact to this day. They were just in Duluth a couple of weeks ago. We had 12 guys up.
What year did you graduate?
I graduated from high school in 06 and then college in 09.
Got it. Okay.
So, and that's part of why we ended up staying in Duluth, because we had thoughts on, we'll go to the Twin Cities after too. That was a pretty typical pipeline. But I had a Great Recession. There was no jobs to be found. I ended up taking a internship even after I graduated at St. Louis County. My wife, Jessica, ended up going to counseling school at UWS. So then we were locked in. We were going to make it through those first couple hard years of, trying to find employment, being on our own as a new married couple. And by the time things had improved and she was free to go get employment with her master's degree, we were locked in too. We loved it here. And we skipped those Twin Cities years, I felt like, and just started here and stayed here. And a lot of our friends kind of make that reference that, we wish we would have ended up back here. And it's like, you still can, if you really want to be here, we can make that happen. But we're really glad that we never left.
Yeah. So, all right. So how long? So you interned for St. Louis County. What was it an HR position?
Yep.
Okay.
It was.
All right. And then did you get hired there after your internship?
Yep. So I worked there for a little over 3 years.
Got it.
So that was my introduction to government.
Got it.
And then 3 years in, I ended up meeting a gentleman, good friend of mine named Thor, who worked for Minnesota Power at the time.
Okay.
We were on a board together.
Cool.
And then he told me about an opportunity that was being posted at Minnesota Power, and threw my hat in the ring and went after it, and ended up getting that, and been there ever since.
And is this the same position you went? Okay.
No. So
tell us about that move up.
Yeah. So I worked at MP for first 3 or 4 years in their human resources department. I did a couple different jobs.
Cool.
Within that, and then I took a total different shift. So one of the things that's encouraged at our company is to try different things and grow your skill sets. So that's when I got into the world of economic development, which I didn't know what that was. I didn't know why the utility had a function related to it. I just knew that my then new boss, Nancy Knorr, who hired me into that role and was really, one of my strongest mentors, she had a fun job. It seemed like she was doing cool stuff. So I wanted to be part of that. And I've been doing that job in some capacity for about the last 9 years.
Cool. Okay. Now, what does that job kind of entail for people that don't know?
Yeah. So at its core, it's about bringing growth to our region. There's electric utilities have a defined service footprint in Minnesota. So there's the total business application of we want to have customers that are coming into the communities that we serve so that we can be their energy provider. But there's also this, we all live here. I mean, I just told you my story. There's so many other stories of people who work at a company like that. These are people who grew up here, who want to see our hometowns be successful. And tracing back to that LTV experience with me in Aurora, I saw what happens to a community when you lose your economic heartbeat. And so the fact that there was a job that I could do in our area where I could help be part of making things better, or maybe finding another new employer that's going to create opportunities for people, and they're going to obviously use electricity too, total package for me. So I wanted to be part of that and took that role. But it's a lot of networking. It's a lot of figuring out what's going on within the broader economic environment, trying to figure out how Duluth and the surrounding region plays into that, and then creating opportunities.
I'm about to ask a dumb question. No. Maybe it's just because I don't know. All right, so say there's a big company that want to move here, okay? What other options for power is there except Minnesota Power?
So there's 3 different types of utilities for electricity in Minnesota.
We're about to learn. Okay.
Yeah.
It's called 101. Okay.
So there's investor-owned utilities.
Yep.
That's like Excel Energy, Minnesota Power, and then Otter Tail out west.
Okay.
Then there's cooperatives.
Yep.
So there's all sorts of cooperatives that serve. Most of them get their energy from Great River Energy.
Yep.
So that's another system, and that was to make sure nobody was left behind in the days of early electrification when the grid was being built. They didn't want the house down the road to not get electricity too because it didn't pencil out. So there was a lot of work on the structure to make sure those people had electricity. And then there's municipal-owned utilities.
Good.
So there are some cities that own their own electric utilities within the state of Minnesota. There's some within our region, and we serve them, a lot of them, wholesale power. So we sell them the big stuff, and then they serve their customers directly.
Right. Well, good thing I asked that, because in my mind I'm thinking they ain't got no choice. Like, you come in here, you getting this Minnesota Power. Like,
but inside Duluth, it has to be Minnesota Power, correct?
Correct. Yeah, but it's Duluth is competing with all sorts of different places for opportunities, right? So there might be a company looking at 5 different cities within Minnesota or the Midwest or the country. And so we're trying to help make the case as a community, and we're a part of that you should put your thing here.
And do y'all bid the same way like a construction company would do on like big jobs or something like that?
Not on the rates. The rates are set and regulated by the state, the Public Utilities Commission, but there's all sorts of ways that we work together with communities and try to make the case that, hey, you should do your thing here if it's going to be good for us.
Interesting. All right, we're going to talk more about that off camera. Sure. I'm just interested. I like learning that kind of stuff. All right, boom. So at what point did you want to get into politics? I know you said you got introduced in the St. Louis County role.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
So growing up as a kid, I was always interested in it. And it wasn't like a family thing. It wasn't like I grew up in it. I was just a weird kid that liked it and was curious about it. The Iron Range, for those who didn't grow up in this TV market, like there were titans of Minnesota politics who came from the range. So the Tom Rukavinas and the David Thomasonis and the Tom Box. And there were many, many more, but they always outkicked their coverage in terms of bringing dollars home and having an impact. And so growing up, I saw those, like just watching the TV dinner news, honestly, is how I got interested. But I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know how to get involved. I didn't know anybody. So then I got to college, and actually where I got my interest in Duluth politics was I had an internship with a labor union in college. And they wanted my skill set because I was studying human resources, and so they do contract negotiations and all sorts of things on the union side. And that also happened to be the 2008 election. So then they needed people to help out with the election too. And so that's how I ended up doing my first door knocking shift. And like all this stuff that would have been super uncomfortable if somebody didn't make me do it, because it was literally my job at the time. That's how it happened. And then there was a big gap between, that was in 2008, and then I probably started to get more involved in like 2016 here. It was just one of those things that I'd filed away and been like, that'd be kind of cool to learn more about. But again, I didn't know anybody. I didn't move to Duluth with any connections. I didn't think that was reachable. Just because I figured, kind of like you said, Duluth is a place where people know everybody. And as an outsider coming in, I didn't think that was something that could be broken through. So, but the more I got into it, the more I just started volunteering and raising my hand and signing up for committees, stuff like that. The more interested I was, I still don't think anything would come from it. It was just like one of those, I'm just going to take this as far as I can go with it sort of things. And this is history, I guess.
Now, was city council the first thing you ran for?
It was. Yeah, and that was a case where the councilor at the time who was leaving, Alyssa Hansen, her background was in economic development.
Got it,
And so there was a skill set match there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I didn't think I was going to get it, though. So in that process, then there's a vacancy and you go through what's called an appointment. And the city council at the time is the one who makes the selection.
Got it.
And so you have to get 5 out of the 8 votes at least to be selected to fill out somebody's term when they resign, which is what happened here.
Yeah.
So that was a wild experience,
Yeah.
and lots of really good people that I'm friends with that were part of that. Kind of like the worst job interview ever, where not only are you interviewing for something in front of all of the other candidates and the public, but also, just to be candid, like there's people who don't want you to succeed.
Yeah.
There's people who are trying to trip you up.
They don't even know you.
No, they don't
Which
know
is
you.
crazy. That's the wildest part of it.
And so that was wild because it's like all of that stuff baked into it, and I'm just interested in serving and like really passionate about stuff, and it worked out somehow, some way.
Yeah. So how many terms have you been on city council now?
So I filled out Alyssa Hansen's term, which ran through the end of 2019. I was appointed in 18, summer of 18. So I had to figure out, did I want to do this any longer after that? I figured out pretty quickly that this was a job, night job that I enjoyed, that I felt like I was adding value to. So then I had to run in 2019. And that was an experience. There was this, I almost swore, this guy named Derek Medved who came out of nowhere, beat me by 96 votes. Love that guy. But so that was an experience, and then I ended up running again last year for re-election. And so this is technically my second term.
Cool. All right. How is it? Well, not now because you've been there for a bit, but your thoughts before being on city council to the reality of being on city council.
Oh man, how much time do we have? That's a loaded question. I try to think back sometimes to when I was new, because you do come in with a fresh perspective and you're not ingrained in it. So I feel like that's valuable, and I think that's the value in having new people step in every once in a while. And then there's just the learning that comes from it, where it's so overwhelming at the beginning. Like, you got to learn all this stuff, and it's a part-time job, and you're trying to figure out how the city works. You're trying to, all these people want to meet with you. You don't even know why.
At all.
You don't know who to trust. So you definitely lean on the people that you're close to. And I feel like that circle doesn't really get a lot bigger. You know more people. And I'm pretty candid. People who know me know that I speak from the heart and I'm not playing games, but like at the end of the day, I got my core group, and those are the people like I bounce things off of just to say, does this make any sense to you before I even talk to anybody else? But it's been the learning experience of a lifetime. Truly,
that's interesting.
You learn so much about yourself too.
It's interesting you say that, because I was talking with one of my old heads, just a couple weeks ago, and he don't really hang with nobody. Like everybody know him. It's from back home, in Pennsylvania anyway. And he said, the more people you meet, the smaller your circle becomes, and kind of like what you said, you people start to want to meet with you, but you never know what it's for. And a lot of times, even if they say it's about this, it probably ain't about that. It might be a whole nother reason, or it might be a conniving thing. It's like, apart from up here, I talk to Joe every day, and my buddy Aaron Jolino, my partner in Pride, my brother. So that's it. I feel like I know everybody in Duluth. I know the city, but it's like, I don't be wanting to really talk to a lot of people like that, because either it's hard to relate in conversations, or like you said, you just don't know what to trust sometimes, or it's so exhausting because what we do is so outreach, people impactful, that when I get a moment to myself, I'm just trying to do that, and only a couple people can invade my quiet time that I allow to do that. It ain't many, so that's
well, and part of that's like, when you're new, I feel you just want to do everything. You want to be everywhere. You want to go to all the events. You want to take on all the issues, and then you quickly figure out what your capacity is, and then you also figure out where you actually can make a difference and where people want you to make a difference. And so I feel like I've evolved in my service, as anybody would, with more experience and perspective.
No, and that's awesome. So I want to get this right. So you are, I saw it in the paper when the mayor first got on. Like, if the mayor is unavailable, you're that guy.
Yep.
What do you call that?
Acting mayor, is the official title.
Acting mayor. We got the acting mayor right here. All right.
Not at the moment.
For now.
But
in this chair, he's acting.
That's, funny story on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to hear about
so
that.
different mayors have different perspectives on this. In the past, some mayors have just appointed a different person every time. Roger has his military service, and so he thought it was important if he gets called out that there be somebody just kind of standing there in case it was needed.
Yep.
So far, we haven't needed it, but I've represented him at a whole bunch of stuff this year because he was out of town for the air show for military obligations. He was out of town for the marathon.
Yep.
So I tell people, like, why would I ever need to run for mayor when I get to do all the cool stuff? And then here you go when he gets back.
You handle the issue stuff.
But my favorite moment so far of being acting mayor was my favorite radio station out of the Twin Cities, the Power Trip Morning Show, was in town back in May. And Roger was out of town. The radio station wanted a proclamation read on the air because it was their 100th year anniversary. Okay. And so I ended up asking for forgiveness, and I made up keys to the city, and I gave them out on the air.
Okay.
And I got this text from Roger right after. He was like, "You gave away keys to the city? Like, we don't have a budget for that." And he was teasing me, but I said, "Don't worry about it. I found them at a place in town. It cost me $27, and I paid for it out of my pocket." So
no, that's awesome.
That was pretty high. You don't know when you're going to get another opportunity.
Exactly. You might as well do
shoot
it.
a shot, right?
Yeah, go crazy.
So that was a blast.
Yeah, that's cool. So, do you have any aspirations to go further? And you probably been asked this before, but who cares? Yeah. To go further in your political journey, down the road.
I don't.
Okay.
Back to my comment about see as far as this will go. I did run for the state legislature in 2022.
Okay, yeah.
And it was the most expensive DFL primary in the state. And that didn't work out, and it was a great learning experience for me. But it also just ingrained in me, I'm not a partisan politics guy. I've always been, I call it an Iron Range Democrat. That's open to interpretation. That's on the political scale now.
Yeah, that's insane.
And I just, going through that experience, it's not to say other people can't do it, but I just feel I'm pretty core to who I am, and I am a socially liberal, more fiscally conservative person, but it's just I don't fit into a box that way. So I don't see partisan politics really being my forte. It's not something that really gets me excited about, and I don't see running a campaign under a partisan designation in the future.
Yeah, no, honestly, when I was young, everybody, I'm gonna be president. The older I get, I'm thinking, I don't ever want to do that. Because, and you know me enough to know, it's very hard to put me in a box. I am not a systems person. Rules, I'm effective at what I do because I got free range. And the people that I work with know that, and other entities that call upon our services know that, which is good. To give us the work, go. Step aside. We got you. But if I'm hovered over, or, they say you can only go A through, L, in my mind, now I want to go outside of that on purpose because you told me I can't. And why can't I? Because they never really give you a reason why.
There's got to be something great.
It got to be, because when I get past this L, it's go time, so, but I'm right there with you. I know there are, things outside of politics that, politics don't allow us to find agreements on or work with the other side as much as we should, Sometimes it's just about laws and just politics, And a lot of, for me personally, it's just it just don't sit right. I know there's a way, and it might not always be the best way, because you never want to please everybody.
No.
Ever. Get that down now.
Yeah.
Okay? For anybody who wants
mistake.
to be, Mohandas K. Gandhi, you're not going to be, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that was an early learning for me. I made some mistakes where I tried to please everybody, and within 6 months of being on the council,
shut up, Arik.
Bit hard on it's not the reality. It's not that you don't want to listen to people, but you also can't be everything to everybody.
Can't.
And I was glad actually that I got some of that learning early, because then that has informed how I've approached it. But back to your point on the like partisan stuff. So that was 2022, and then I wasn't going to run again in 2023. I had a lot of parent guilt about whether I should keep going, whether I should be home more. And, you know, I've worked out just how I do it differently so that I could get a little bit of both there. But that was my favorite campaign by far, because 2023 was I'm not trying to please anybody. I'm just going to be who I am. Like, labor's in my corner. You've got people who lean right, but maybe are closer to the middle who are in my corner, people who are left but not far left. And that's the campaign we ran, and ended up with the most votes in the city.
That's awesome.
And so that was like, that meant a lot.
I'm sure it was
fun,
liberating coming out of that state run too, to say, okay.
Yeah, it's part of it. Like, you wonder, should I just hang it up for that reason too? And that wasn't why I ended up not running, but it's in the back of your mind of, you know, losing elections sucks. Right? It's not fun. But it's hard to get yourself back up. Yeah, right? Like, we're 3 in the club here.
Yeah, so, right.
But it's also like, don't let that be the limiting factor, because a lot of times circumstances drive those results too. And, you know, that's why I always... People don't even hardly remember that I ran that campaign anymore. You know, it's never mentioned in articles or anything.
Which is okay.
And
it is
it's fine. And Alicia's doing a good job, and I feel like I've so far moved past that. But it was a part of my growth to be like, okay, that ain't it for me. Like, not a partisan guy. If I'm going to be involved, it's going to be at the local level.
Yep. So how many more terms do you think you want to go with, at least where you are, just in this capacity?
I don't know, man.
Figure out as you go.
Yeah, there's a world I could easily say it's either or right now. I could say, my kids are getting older. It makes sense for me to wrap it up here at the end of this term. But I've also been down that path, and I don't want to prematurely say that that's it either, because I also really enjoy the work, and could see a world where I continue on in one capacity or another, but it's too early to say. Good news is I don't have to decide that for 3 years.
Good.
The best place to spend election season is not on the ballot, but it's fun when you're running, but it takes a lot out of you. And it's hard to get back up for that race again after. And I did it 2 years in a row, so I'm just enjoying this year, not having to do any of that, just supporting candidates instead of being out there on my own.
Good. How many kids do you have?
I got 2.
What's their ages?
I got a 9-year-old daughter, Amelia, and then a 6-year-old son, Arlo.
Cool. Awesome. Well, that's cool, man. So here's a quick question before we wrap up. I always ask people this. If you could go back to your younger self and say one thing, what would you say?
I think for me, I've followed a fairly traditional path where for the first 30 years of life, I waited for people to ask me, or waited to be invited.
Yeah.
Whether that be politics or job opportunities, it took me until well into my late 20s and early 30s to just be more assertive. And not in an aggressive way, but just if you want something, don't be afraid to ask for it. People aren't going to know what you want unless you do. And so I think I've always just had this feeling that, somebody's got to know more than I do, or somebody's got to be more connected within Duluth, or, apply it to any facet of life. But I just feel like once you realize nobody's coming to save us, nobody's coming to figure this out for us, this is it. We are the community, and we got to figure this out for ourselves. It's kind of a liberating feeling, because it allows you to try stuff. And maybe it's not going to all work out, but for me, I've made mistakes on the council, but I also feel like we've had some really good successes. And just figuring it out in public, in front of all the people who pay attention, that's also been a huge learning moment for me. So I would just say, don't be afraid to shoot your shot and see where it goes. And it's not always going to work out, but you're going to be better for it.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, that's good, dude. No, we appreciate you coming on and spending some time, learned a lot. We had a little history lesson, and still got a lot to learn about the economic part of it, but I like it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's super complicated, but it's a lot of fun. And
seems like
it's a team sport. Yeah. The thing about politics or my work or how I approach life is it's a team sport. We all have individual efforts.
For sure.
We can't do any of this stuff alone. That's kind of how I But now I'm gonna feel like I want to flip it and interview you at some point.
You know, hey, we gonna do one of those segments. We do one of those. It's crazy because a couple people always say, "Man, when you gonna get interviewed?" It's like, I mean, y'all can ask me questions, but I just like hearing people's stories. That's like one of my favorite things. So,
yeah, no, this has been a pleasure. I'm really glad you asked me, and this is fun.
You bet,
fun, man.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all for joining us, and we'll see y'all next time.